Aqui é a Home Office 5521. We are take a look at the business channel and we have, a Japanese or Chinese something made in Asia having a talk. I have no idea what the hell is going on, but I'm doing another control test here. As you can observe, I have access to the internet, and despite our, hoax scam flunked again, if you are doing a monitoring procedure from the deep inside of those companies by the model suggested, which means the FBI, the international law enforcement as the Interpol and NATO, maybe even the CIA inside, these companies as provider of communication, you observe that the address as IP indeed can't be configured in the way we are having, because I was setting kind of a sequence as a sequential access in a very first moment the modem, then my Wi-Fi, and then I have the access, and the Wi-Fi got cloned, right? Right. So I did the Wi-Fi as a machine, with no one accessing the Wi-Fi, but as a machine. And you probably have a big problem now with a big lie, because you are in the limit between the cretinism, which is your doing, or the idiotism, which is the continuous doing made by you associating others since at least 2012. It means that the origination of this explicit is Brazil, public budget, with deeper levels as communication, segmented by financial interest, which is the illicit gain as main purpose, transnational organized crime by Brazilian law. If you take a look in our constitution, Article 5, I think that is item 41 or something like this, it's saying that the law will protect my guarantees, but they can claim the protection of my guarantees with the offender, because the Article 217 says that the state will protect the sports entity and implies me as a fan, and the family, 226, but the state with criminals inside, distributed by state institutions, which is the defense, and the public institution, which implies the security, the prosecutors, and the democratic institution as the judges, the Congress, and the government. Of course, that, I can't claim the protection of my family and my basic rights and guarantees and family values and the dignity of the sports entity that I'm a fan with them. So we must bring this to the international cooperation as part of the development of mankind, Article 4, Item 9, to have this strike. And on Article, I think that's 84, it's the legitimacy of the president to allow the entrance as military forces. They must come inside the Brazilian geographic space and remains by this authority, by the authorization of this authority, which is the president. But the international law enforcement isn't a military enforcement, even the NATO. Can you get? It's the civil society organized to prevent crimes and act very according with the law, which implies the international jurisdiction as application of your local law and constitution that sometimes you take a look and have nothing by the poisoned state of mind, by the continuous drug use, considering the illicit gains from public budget, and people but things a bit more clear for you that the Brazilian state has the knots as positive one in the value and negative one at the budget, and by the Article 217 and 226 the Brazilian state is guilty. And if we confirm this by the Article 174, the Brazilian state isn't reliable. And this is in the way they do things, the way the Brazilian state do things, by the variables inside. States are that structure that, have the development of things by the variables inside. And this got confirmed by the mandatory need as protection of public records and data inside the public departments. To protect the public data, have a special protection against the public offenders, which implies the variables that sometimes receive the money at the public department, the police department, or the bench to change cases, offer decisions, invent proofs, or, in an ultimate case, create a law or an amendment the Constitution. Amazing, isn't it? This is the sad reality of Brazil. Inside Brazilian institutions, public with variables, all criminals inside. 7423 item 1. Inside the security forum is very recommended to have the strike, by the international jurisdiction, international law enforcement, considering the NATO as backup. Database Sigma is a research offered to them. In the same way, the financial paper has conditional charge to support the international law enforcement, which implies the Interpol and the FBI and the OECD sometimes may be, against the transnational organized crime associated and very inside the Brazilian public budget, which but things very well segmented as association with public departments. Brazil must offer those notes, which implies the Brazilian corrupted variables as public officers and international peers at the budget. If Brazil do not act, of course that will suffer the consequence, and very segmented against those institutions. And then the registry about the international players inside the public budget has other sources to be confirmed. Basically debit and credit with an interface having this interflow or this interconnection by a bank, by a registry of bank operation, by the destiny, by the origination of the flow, and etc. But these entire things create a big instability by the wrongdoing of those Brazilian variables as human resource, bad human resource, by wrongdoings with other areas that must, by equity jurisdiction, offer them in the same way or will suffer the same kind of consequence. Solidarity scams, peer-to-peer, closed hand at gains, closed hands at loss, and all consequence as causal relation from this. You are all gonna be sent to jail, and it's an international prison, a boat with a psychiatry inside to understand the limits at your sick mind, which puts you inside the interval as cretinism and idiotism. But sometimes it's only cowardice, and this can be applied at the medical group or team under the mirror procedure inside the boat. Have a nice weekend.